Welcome back. So how good was that last episode? All that paint work and all those people working in such a very tight time frame. What I've decided to do this week is to actually go back and review that and do a recap, mainly from a technical point of view, because I had so many questions that people wanted to know about the whole process and what we were doing. So that's the start of the program, and then we're going to go into the second phase of the clear coat, where the whole thing gets blocked back out again, recoated, and we load it up and bring it home. So I hope you enjoy the show. Righto, so grab the opportunity to zip up the PPG once again this week. Just talk to John about what we're doing. So John, pretty much straight into it. So that's my Vibrance Hi build primer that I put on the car, and then you guys jumped straight in with 180 and 240.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we're just giving it one more final rub just to be sure that we're ready to go through to the next stage.
So in a lot of cases that would have potentially been the final go before paint, but because that was my work, and then we brought it up, rubbed that back, and now we're in the process of putting this wet on wet primer.
Yeah, so this wet on wet primer is quite a unique product. You can use it in paint straight over it, or you can mix it a little bit differently and use it in a high build mode. So in this way here we set a good ground coat for the colour, but we also get to have a look at the panels prior to getting ready for
came out with that sort of semi-gloss almost look about it, didn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
So then once we've done that, it's all hands on deck then. So we've gone Guy Coat 400.
We gave it a light block with a bit of 320 just to really get into that peel, and make sure it's right. And then we start to finish with the 400 on the block, and then finally into our 150mm sander.
And of course we've talked about that, about people are horrified about using those, but I mean, used correctly with the current technology of the Dios electric, they're just so much more controllable, aren't they?
Yeah, the pad on its own is quite rigid, and again, as we're controlling the speed, the lower the speed helps. You don't want this to be rolling at a high rate of knots. You just want a good control of low speed to give it a really good cut.
And of course we're still going to get a couple of edges, so you can see there in that picture where it's been masked now, just a few spots that have been patched up. Yeah,
that's right. So we've used a G6 Aersol, which is an epoxy, and that's just to we now don't have to reapply any primer or ground coat in base coat, so we're quite confident now. We finished with some 800 lightly on an interface pad, and even a little bit of 1000 Abril on damp, just to give it a clean up, and we're quite confident we can paint straight over that now.
So when you say damp, so I think you're using metho water?
Just metho water in a spray bottle, or straight clean water.
Yep.
As long as it's clean, demineralised water.
And then of course we're then cleaning.
Yeah, that's right. Clean, and clean again. That's probably the message.
So metho water first, then the prepsol?
Yeah, definitely metho water. One of the biggest issues we've seen over the years is sweat marks and handprints on cars, and prepsol just won't take any of those things off. So a water-based cleaner, metho water that we sell pre-packaged, helps to remove all those waterborne contaminants.
Righto, so we're then ready for some colour. So the next phase, and all of this technical information that you're seeing on the screen will be in the description as well, so you can go in and read all of that.
So with the base coat, we've got our gun set up. We're using an X5500 with a 1.3 I nozzle, which is a nice, tall, flat, skinny fan. Good control, 1.5 bar, and 2 turns out to give us the control we need. The drop coat, we just drop that pressure down to 1 bar, and that just gets us on a nice even layer of base while the base coat's semi-wet, not once it's dry. So yeah, with our technique coat here, we've dropped the pressure down to 1 bar, and we're just putting on a nice even coat over the whole surface. In a cross pattern helps, but we're doing it when the base coat's semi-wet, not completely dry, so we get good adhesion as well. And then that all dries as one nice even appearance. Yeah, so with a clear coat, opposed, we're using a HVLP, high volume, low pressure setup for our base coat. With our clear coat, we're using an RP, reduced pressure, and we like to separate our guns because we don't want any surprises in our clear coat. So we like to have a base coat gun and a clear coat gun separate, and an RP is really good if you've got a compressor that piston type. Doesn't pump a lot of consistent volume through. So we're using the 1.3i. This is our sealing clear. So this particular clear, some D800 or DC516, dries nice and hard, goes on super flat, and it's just to help seal off all that base coat, so that we can come back and give it a nice rub and a flow coat.
So how many coats? I know people talk coats, and I know that's not a technical term, but...
Yeah, so we've put on 3 coats, but just 3 very quick, thin coats. We're not trying to get gloss off the gun. We don't want, what we don't want is fat edges. We don't want any clear coming out of the holes and dribbling out and making life harder for us, when we want to sand it again. So just 3 really super consistent even
So there
coats.
it is, looking pretty darn flash, and then straight away you're back on the block.
Yeah, so using the 800, as I said, it dries, or the 516, it dries nice and hard. So we've used a fast harden with a medium thinner, which is not usual for an area so large, but that helps us now really chop into this with some 400 dry and begin the process to get it a little bit more shinier.
And then following up behind you on the machine there, so that's they got the interface on that, or is it hard at that stage?
It starts with the hard pad just to make sure that we're
Nice
sanding
and
it evenly, and then the interface pad to go around all those curved edges where we don't want to rub through.
So with that machine, 400 then 800?
400 then 800, and again a little bit of 1000 Abrolon doesn't hurt, so damp. And the Abrolon's good too, damp. It just dissipates any static electricity you might have from sanding dry.
Okay,
and,
so there we are with some information. So 400 then 800 dry, followed with Abrolon damp.
Yeah.
And that damp is just water, or with the metho water?
Just, metho water, a bit of clean water, and we use just an atomizer bottle, not a hose running crazily over the grates there. We don't need much. And another tip is you can put a Merlon type pad on the machine and vacuum all the dust off as well.
Oh, okay, that's a good idea, because obviously that cleanliness thing is what we're going to sort of start seeing here now. Is we've obviously disassembled the car again and hung all those panels, backmasked the guards, and the others are set up on a stand, the doors, to be able to do the backs and fronts at the same time. Now, they always talk flow coat, but I don't see this as so much a flow coat but a finish coat, because we're going to colour sand it.
Yeah, and look, when we put our initial clear on, we're filling up profile from a base coat. We've got some nice glass flake in there, so that initial clear helps to fill up all that profile from your base coat. This final clear now, this is getting it ready so we can get it nice and glossy, and when we sand it, colour sand or clear sand it to polish it, we get that really nice pop, and there's no more movement back into the base coat. All that's done in the clear coat prior, and that's been baked and cured off separately.
Now, a couple of things I noticed when you guys were doing this. One thing was you actually wired the stands to the grid floor, and that's obviously something you learnt from experience.
Yeah, painters can get a bit clumsy sometimes when there's so many parts in the booth and you've got an air hood on and hoses running around. So good idea for the clumsy painter like myself to make sure that nothing's going to go airborne or fall over. So positioning the parts is important. Once they're positioned, do a walk around so you see where you're going to be once you're doing that, and then once you're happy with the spacing of the parts, tie those down, those stands, so they don't move and take off.
Now, I see Trev in there as well. So Trev manages the training centre, I believe.
Yeah, Trev's our training manager here.
Yeah, so I see he's got the daylight torch out and checking your work.
Yeah, he sure does. So I'm just going over and checking the smoothness of edges, and Trevor's checking the actual coverage to make sure that we haven't missed anything.
Very good, and we decided not to redo the mirrors because they come up so good straight off the gun the first time around, so they're already on the shelf ready to go. And here we see we're back on the machine again, so this is now prepping up with the 800.
Yeah, so while the parts are getting ready to be cleared, we're preparing the body shell to come in straight after. So exactly the same process. make sure that we've left Terry there on his own.
I was just going to say, it looks like Terry's on his knees. He's got the
he
easy
did say
job.
he was working hard, so the video proves it. But
and then while Terry was doing that, I ended up on the camera because Louise wasn't there. This is me making sure my jams are right. So all those boot jams and things, so a bit of 400 in, where it was a bit peely, and then 800, and then with that nice soft foam back 800 to get that all, so that when it comes off the gun, I don't have to be doing too much on the colour sanding process.
Yeah.
And all of those reverse curves around the back window, they're all, to me, all the really important parts to get nice and flat before we start putting on the clears.
That's right.
So we're now putting this final coat on, so just talk through us, John, what you're up to.
Yeah, so one of the mistakes I see when people are flow coating is they tend to put that first coat on super heavy, and you're putting a slippery clear coat onto a slippery surface, and it can end up in tears. If you get runs in your first coat, you might as well walk out of the booth and go home. But all I want to do is seal that off. The appearance needs to be like cling film, so I'm actually using a 1.2 nozzle here. I've got it restricted further.
There goes that stand.
I've just kicked that stand, clumsy painter. So I've got the material only at 1.5 turns. I'm going to put on 2 to 3 really quick coats just to get a nice even appearance. I've got my pressure up around 2.6 bar, so slightly higher atomization. And what I'm thinking about is a poor bloke that's got to sand this to polish it. So my job as a painter is to get all those difficult areas as smooth as possible. I don't want to get dribbles out of the handles, so you'll see as I get heavier I start to not do the overlap over the handle space as much as I do over the complete panel. I paint around those areas, and the same with where you've got holes for your emblems and so on. Paint around those and make your life easier.
And as that guy that's going to get to sand it again, and a lot of people probably amazed that I'm going to hard block this again with 800 now and work my way up through the grits to polish it, and you'll see that down the track. Having a painter like yourself that helps with that process, because I'm looking at the ends of panels and all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And even this process now, when you start to look at that body getting ready to go in, it looks good in matte.
Yeah,
and if anything looks good in matte, it's going to look real good when it's shiny.
That's right. So yeah, you can see all those swages, all those lines. If you put on heavy coats of clear either way, we're going to have runs galore. So the way I apply on those panels is the same way I'm going to paint the shell. And at this point, only one person, myself, is going to apply the clear, so we get a good, consistent, even finish.
So was Casey laughing then because he didn't have to get on the gun? It was all about you?
Yeah, Casey had enough. And I think he's a bit nervous with the camera because they do say it puts on 10 pounds.
So I'll throw in now, you can see that it's masked off and the engine bay is not done. And a lot of people have said to me, what's the go with the engine bay not being done? The reason for that was we had a time window here at PPG with John's time and also the training centre from bookings, that this had to be the time. And the fact that I was running behind a bit, I'd made the call that I would do the body first and do the engine bay later. I would have painted the engine bay later anyhow, simply because of the fact that it's going to be in a satin finish, and like even when we did the Mustang, we had all the body finished and the underside was in primer.
Yeah.
So I'm just that one stage behind. So for those that are wondering, that's why that's happened.
Yeah.
And now we get a look, so the door's open. So you're obviously, give that a bake. Have a look at that.
Yeah, we've given that a bake. So again, the advantage of doing this early is that we get the clear coat to start to harden up. So, in 12 weeks time when we've got it on show, nothing's moving. So this is still giving us an advantage by painting the parts, prior to the engine bay undercarriage. So yeah, you can see that's looking not too bad. So by painting it in and out, we get that nice, we've got no blow-ins on the inside, we've got no clear coat edges to worry about. So again, less work in the polishing.
And what I'm really happy about when I look at that front guard is just the reverse curves and where it comes down under the badge and goes to the bottom. You happy, John?
I love the colour. That colour is awesome.
Alright, let's get it cleaned up, boys. Start getting ready to blow it in, John.
So we've had a bit of a look at that. You're obviously happy with the colour and the way it's come up.
Yeah.
And now the boys are cleaning up, and we've already said it, but we just continue to say is cleanliness.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait for people to see this colour in life. It's got so much depth and character, but cleaning is so important. So we've cleaned that outside the booth, we've pushed it in, we'll clean it again. And again, a two-stage cleaning, water-based cleaner first, solvent-based cleaner second. And when we put our clear on, we've got no surprises in silicon or any white marks coming through.
I mean, that was one thing that stood out to me, is that when it was all done, there was very little, you know, bits and pieces in it, any fallout from the booth, which was awesome, but more importantly, nothing showing through from underneath, or, you know, like you say, handprint, silicons, all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
So this is you now on your own doing the flow on the body.
Yeah, and the sequencing is important here, and I've started from the sill onto the quarter. I think my first coat, I had to work out what the sequence was, and I think I ended up with sill panel, quarter panel, turret, other quarter, and then sill. So just getting that sequence right to get a nice even wet edge all the way through. And then, yeah, again, same gun setting, same pressures, so we reproduce the same finish that we did on the panels. We've got everything masked up nicely, so we reduce the amount of dust coming through. Even though we're going to sand it, we don't want that nasty stuff.
It still tends to show. I know when we did tailspin, if you knew where to look, you know, there's a couple of bits there, and you can sand all you like, but if it's in the colour, it's in the colour.
Yeah. So yeah, look, we've probably done, you know, a week's work here in a day. So yeah, and the edges here, you'll see how I'm painting fairly quick, tight overlaps back over themselves, and because I've got the fluid restricted, I can keep building that up until I get the look that I want, which is the flatness. You know, so again, I'm thinking about you, Howard. I don't want you to rub out too much orange peel.
You only left me one run, I think, which is really good.
I didn't see it myself. So.
Oh, didn't you? Yeah, good one.
So yeah, this just again, you know, trying to paint these. You've got to think about spraying in different directions, not just one direction and one overlap style. Otherwise, you'll end up with orange peel and runs.
I'm up here now, it's Thursday morning, so we've driven up through the rain. And I've got to say, it's very satisfying to be in here on my own, just having 5 minutes with the camera to look at all of that work that we've done. And I mean, it's very much a team effort, but a lot of these little intricate areas is my specialty and the stuff that I love doing. To get all of that to look like that, to now come in here on my own and just be able to take it all in, very satisfying. I often wonder why I continue to do this, but it's moments like these that make it all worthwhile, I guess. John's got that looking pretty flat. See, I've got one bit of a run to fix in the jam here. That's not unusual with this style of work. We're trying to get a lot of clear on, a lot of depth, and then enough for me to be able to sand out all those tight areas and polish it up. Easy. Well, John, now it's time to put it back together.
Carefully.
So you weren't here this day, so Darren and I come up on the, now what are we up to, Thursday? So we've gone Thursday, Friday, public holiday, Tuesday, Wednesday, back together carefully. And a lot of people might think it's a bit strange we don't tape anything, but Darren and I find we've worked together so much now, we'd prefer not to have the tape. You tend to get a bit lazy. So you can see what sort of gap you've got, and we've had them on and off that many times now. So we're not trying to gap it perfectly, we're just going to get it together so we can get it on the trailer and get it back home. And once we got it back, we've then put the rubbers and all back on it, and I think that'll probably come up in a minute. But mate, the colour looks awesome there.
Colours, it's got so much so much character. You know, it goes from a nice bright clean blue into a deep, you know, red tone. It's yeah, very special. I'm looking forward to seeing it on the ground with the wheels on. But it's interesting how you use the towels as well. The towels and the blankets to put the doors on.
I said to Darren, "What's with the blanket, mate?" And he goes, "I don't want to drop a spanner on the on the opening." And I went, "Yeah, that makes sense." But we normally use a towel and when we're putting them on, so if you do give it a bit of a donk, it helps. So very carefully winching it up onto the open trailer.
It does look nice going up there, doesn't it?
Yeah, and unfortunately I haven't seen it in full sun yet because it's been overcast ever since we've done it.
Yeah, the blue aluminium is going to really stand out when that sun hits it.
You can see there it's almost two-tone.
Looking forward to seeing it.
You put them big chrome hoops under it. So it's home off the trailer, and then straight away we've pulled the guards off it and hung them up in the container to get them out of trouble so we don't damage anything, because I've now masked it off so that we can get that engine bay and undercarriage finished up and get some colour on that. So it's looking sensational.
Yeah, like I said, at least now the colour and clear's having a bit of time to dry while you're doing the other bits, so we've still gained a lot of time by doing this.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm looking to let it settle a bit, and I'll take the top off it then to let it breathe, and then work through that process of all those papers, which will come up in another program. So mate, thanks for the opportunity to come up and try and make this one a little bit more technical than the last one, because there's clearly a lot of interest out there from all the questions and comments I've had, and really appreciate your time and PPG's time to be able to bring this all together.
Yeah, and look, you know, the training facility that we've used, it's open. We've got training facilities around the country if people want to come and learn some of these things or try some of the equipment or some of the product. You know, it's just a matter of contacting each local
each office in each state.
Yeah, and
very good.
Come and have a play.
Awesome. All right, mate. Thank you very much.
No worries.